I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? All right, Joe. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. A little warmer than it has been in the last few months, so should make everybody feel good. So, our roll call tonight. Everyone here is present, so it's good to see everybody. Approval of the agenda. We just have a few changes on here I'd like to make, or add-ons, I should say. Under business items, under 8.4, we're going to put a grievance with the fire department that we'd like to bring forward tonight. And then also under financial, B5, we want to put the contract that we had a meeting with the road commission about the road and dust and scraping for this year. And then lastly, under board discussion, I would like to add Salem Springs in a USD, the USD Urban Services District, kind of an update. And I think going forward under the USD, everything that's kind of coming on board, that we would like to give everybody, maybe every month, just have an update of kind of what's going forward, so we keep everybody involved and up to date of what's currently going on. So, any other additions or deletions on the agenda? Any questions? Okay, all those in favor accepting this agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we're all set. Okay, we have the public hearing tonight concerning our budget for this year. It's been posted on the website. People have gone through it. So if we could open this up, and if there's any of you that like to comment or make any comments during the public hearing, this would be the time. So we open the public hearing at 7:07. And is there anybody out there who has a comment about the budget? Okay. Any board members, anything? The public? So do we need to close the public hearing already? No comments? All right, then let's close the public hearing and move on at 7:08. That took a minute. Okay, so we're down to public hearing. Public comment. We already did that. Any public comment tonight? Linda?
Yeah, in the board packet, you have a motion to approve cost of living bonus for full and part-time employees. It said there'll be an equal distribution to each eligible employee. So does that mean if you have 4 employees, everybody gets $2,500?
Basically, well, we'll get into the, we disbanded the retirement program last year. And a lot of people said, well, you took our retirements away from you. No, we didn't. That wasn't the purpose of doing that. But people have been here, which are 5 employees. We had budgeted last year to put that money in, which is $10,000. We took the people's pay and a percentage according to the old retirement plan. This we have 5 employees, and the $10,000 will be distributed amongst them 5 employees that are here. I can go over them, and when we get to that part, we have Carol Leojo, we have Kim, our deputy clerk, Janice, our deputy treasurer, and that's 3. Ann Alexander is 4. And then Jim Rockwell, fire chief. So them would be the 5 that it would be distributed to.
Again, Gary, my question is not to whom are you distributing the money? The motion says there will be an equal distribution.
Right.
My question is it an equal amount or is it based on wages? And if it's based on wages, I'm aware of at least one of the employees that you just named, there's absolutely no accountability for the hours that are worked. Because I asked to see the timesheets and was told there were none. I have a problem that you take taxpayers' money, give it to a bonus when we, the taxpayers, can't see the work that's being done for the money that we're already paying the staff. Thank you.
Okay. Next.
Yeah, I have a problem too. Some of these people you're gonna be giving this money to don't even have 6 months with the township. And you're already giving them bonuses. Don't they have, shouldn't they have to prove themselves?
Only anybody 6 months that we're giving it to.
Less than a year?
It's been 3
Yeah,
years,
that's ridiculous, Gary.
almost 3 years. It's been the policy for years on the retirement plan. Okay, anybody else?
You said 3 years on that?
2.5 years, I think most have been here. Be 3 years in November. Okay, anybody else? Okay, public comments closed, and now we're go down to just a few comments I have.
Yeah.
The
Gary.
the workshop that is coming up, as you've seen in our messenger this week that came out, is on the Salem Township Green Infrastructure Vision Workshop that we want to encourage all the people in the township to be a part of it. I've asked Sue tonight, maybe she could share a few words. This is on April the 21st, 2015.
Yes.
And give us a little update on this.
Thank you. You've all seen it in the messenger, as Gary has said. This is a project that is done by the Huron River Watershed Council. They approached our Land Preservation Board and offered to do this workshop for us. And it's a real hands-on workshop in which they're going to identify the open space, the green infrastructure within the township. And so we need as much input as we can from individuals who live on land, who know it personally, what's happening with the land. And especially we need Furman there because Furman knows every inch of this township. It's April 21st and it's from 7 to 9 here at the hall. And invite your neighbors, invite everyone. I'm going to try and see if South Lyon Herald will put an article in to encourage you all to come. And this is at no cost to the township. They will provide a report that will be able to be used by the Planning Commission for planning purposes for the master plan that they're working on. So that's about all. Come with your markers, and we're going to have a big map, and you're going to they're going to go through and mark it up, this map with an overlay.
Yeah.
So we need as much input on your land that you know in the township. Thank you.
Okay, and that's Tuesday, April 21st,
21st at 7.
from 7 to 9 here in the Township Hall. And so we encourage everyone to be here to find out where all the green infrastructure is, especially spotting the bald eagle, right? Bud?
Yeah,
Bud's got a picture of the bald eagle in his backyard. Paper might be there. Maybe tonight after you put it at the back table so people can look at it. A couple people have spotted it and it's been quite interesting. So maybe we have a lot of them in the township. Okay, also my last comment is I want to thank my beautiful daughter Jamie back there for helping out tonight, providing the refreshments while my wife's down in sunny Florida. So
You want to say that one more time?
So Jamie's my oldest and the most problem child, but she's great at it, so, love her to death. She was my worst child, like really, she really was, but she's turned out to be a great gal, so. But, love her to death. So. Okay, so enough of that, and we'll go to our consent agenda, Mr. Wensley.
I move that Salem Township approve the following consent agenda items. The minutes of last month's February 10th regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. The disbursements for February 2015 includes the general fund check roster amount of $85,452.09. That's checks 25,200 through 25,244. The escrow fund, $4,935. Checks 1583 through 1585. We had a payroll of last month of $50,462.61. Paid by Paycor, $186.21. The sewer fund, we had $6,778.75. Checks 1941 and 1942. For March invoices, we will be writing checks out of the general fund of $75,446.92. The sewer fund, $134,900.60. And last, the escrow fund, we have invoices of $2,290. So do I have a second to support this?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, any other questions on the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is passed. All right, we'll move down to the employee policy manual, removal, section
Mr.
6.6.
Supervisor, before you get into the business items, did you want to take up the lease on the Fort Tracks property this evening also?
I think we
You passed a motion at the last meeting to have me draft one.
Right.
But I think the board needs to actually approve the
Okay.
contract before it's.
and you have that ready, I assume you have that ready, so. So we need to make a motion to approve it. As the whole, we have copies of that up here?
I don't have copies, I have one copy, somebody can make copies and distribute it.
Yeah, Jim, why don't you, if you can make some copies of that for us, and,
I do it, but it may take a while.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. We can have that at the end of the meeting, kind of give us his, what happened to him, so. Slip and fall injury, yeah. So we're glad he's back, and his wife Mary's in the back there, and I know she's had to put up a lot with him here, being at home, but she's been a good nurse, she's been a good nurse, and
It's been a very good year.
they're still together, so.
And a good driver.
Okay, so, Mr. Wensley, you wanna go over that?
Sure, we'll make a motion to remove, I move that Salem Township remove the following section of the Salem Township Employees Policies and Procedures Manual as attached. Just section 6.6, the pension plan. This will take effect immediately. And once I get a second, then we'll explain a little bit more in detail about it.
Support.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Supervisor, a year ago, as you see in the board packet, March 11th, 2014, we terminated the retirement plan. In our endeavor to do that, we never removed the section out of the employee handbook to remove the pension plan section. So this is just more of an administrative endeavor to do rather than just leave this in here. So basically, we're just striking that section out. So we have a second.
Okay, and the other thing is, you know, when we did this was it last year? Just to make sure there were people making comments that we were taking retirements away from people. But once again, the plan was, the people that were getting a retirement, the employees in the township, was that to budget the money, put it in, you know, in the budget, and then distribute it as the board sees fit. So every year, this money would be put in, I believe it's in the budget again for next year, and it's up to the board discretion how they want to distribute that. Instead of having a pension plan, something that the township for years, as we all remember the famous 457, and some of the issues we've had with that, and other things that have gone away where we don't feel that the township should be managing pension funds. This way, we can, individuals who have their own private retirement accounts and they want to use it for retirement, we can make a contribution to their pension plans if that's what they choose for us to do, or to pay them directly and have the taxes taken out and just use the money. So that's the plan of this.
Mr. Supervisor, I have one question that came to mind for tonight. Over and above deleting this particular section from the employee's manual, this might be an appropriate question for Mr. Plato. Since this pension plan was created via an ordinance back in 1999, should we couple this motion with repealing or rescinding that ordinance?
Yeah, normally, if you have an ordinance that implements something, to repeal it, you need to have something of equal force, which would take a similar ordinance repealing the prior ordinance. So that would probably be something we would need to do right up formally. If we have an ordinance repealing the prior ordinance that was implementing the plan.
So then the question is, should we handle it that way? And we can do it at the next meeting.
I think to do it appropriately, we does do it at the next meeting, so you can actually see the ordinance that's going to be passed, rather than approving something that you haven't seen.
Right. Okay, then you want to take the motion back?
So I will, instead of pushing this through today, I'll ask that we table this motion until next month. And David, you want?
I concur.
Actually, it'd be a motion to postpone, not to table.
Sorry. Motion to postpone, all right.
Motion to table is at the same meeting, motion to postpone to a different meeting would be.
Okay. And that will be my motion to postpone.
Gary, isn't there something in that 6.6 that has a time date on it though? For March 31st? Every year, you have to distribute?
Yeah, that is in the policy about distributing on the 31st of March.
So, your next meeting's in April.
But I think
Just a point, that's all.
right, but I think we made the motion to
That was back last year.
right, the motion, I got it here somewhere.
Yeah, I disputed it with,
But
Can we
it's
do
still
this
in it's still in the policy manual with a date on it, is all I'm just bringing up the point, that's all.
It's kind of a moot point though, isn't it, since the pension plan has been terminated, it's not in existence?
Technically not in existence.
Can we do this in a two-step process and eliminate this section of the employee manual tonight and then come back with a formal repeal or rescinding next month?
this was the motion last year.
Last year. So really all you're doing tonight is you're amending the policy procedures manual to remove the section that refers to the pension plan. The pension plan was actually terminated a year ago, but to do it properly, we should have an ordinance repealing the 1999 ordinance, which we can do at the next meeting.
Okay. All right.
So the motion to postpone is still fine, it's still good, and,
All those in favor? Second, Dave? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passed. Okay, down to, cost of living bonus plan. I move that Salem Township approve at the discretion of the Board of Trustees an annual cost of living bonus, which shall be paid as a lump sum distributed to full-time, part-time employees who work for Salem Township on March 31st, 2015. Seasonal, temporary, and contract employees are not eligible. This will be distributed, the equal distribution to each eligible employee based on the amount allotted in the approved line item budget that's listed there. The total amount being distributed is $10,000. Do I have a second on that?
second.
Mr. Winsley seconds it. Any other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. Okay, down to our building coordinator position. I move that Salem Township Board of Trustees approve the change in the job description of the current administrative assistant, Ann Alexander, to the position of the building coordinator position effective April 1st, 2015, with an hourly rate of $16.50 per hour. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Bill Converse. Just a quick comment, nice to have Ann with us here tonight, here on the front row. And Ann's been doing a great job in the township. As you know, the building, she kind of filled in after Lori, I can't remember her last name, O'Brien, left us, and she's filled in and done a great job learning the job, and this building is picked up, and she's just done a great job, and we appreciate her, her work and her positive attitude in the office during the day, so it's great to have her, so. All right, any other questions up here? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion's passed. All right, down to the motion to approve. We got, for the roads, we got Mr. Converse.
Mr. Supervisor, I move the Salem Township approve the Washtenaw County Road Commission's 2015 local road dust control agreement in the amount of $15,743.58 and authorize the supervisor to sign the agreement.
Second on that?
I'll second it.
Reggie seconds it. Any other discussion on this? This is our annual dust control and scrapings that they do every year. We did have a meeting with the road commission this past Friday. There's a lot on the table, a lot of discussion going on, what's gonna happen. Of course, on the May the 5th, on the election, if this passes, road work that can be done. We also have other projects that have been put towards the township, and so we can give a full report. And I would say, Mr. Road Committee, maybe next month to go and finalize some of them. I know they have matching funds for the ditching and stuff that they do regularly, so that'll probably be presented at the next meeting. But I think people see it in the newsletter from the tax increase on your winter tax bill that the county imposed upon us. They're planning to do Curtis Road, which is double chip seal. I've had many emails already, people very dissatisfied with that. Kind of out of our control, because we don't own the roads, but that's what they'll be doing to Curtis Road from Plymouth to 6 Mile.
And I just add to that, the reason for the delay would also because depending upon which way proposal one goes, if proposal one does pass, we'll be getting $700,000 that we've already paid into the road. We'll be getting that back over a period of time, of which they haven't really committed to when that period of time is. but we would like to know when that period of time is, how long we have, and how we can work with the projects we have on tap as to when they would happen, and we need to prioritize them as well.
Okay, we have a second on that, Reggie seconded it, any other questions on this? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion's passed. Okay, we're down to financials under salaries. I move that Salem Township.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
I'm
just
just-
a point of order, were we gonna take care of the fire department grievance in this section or later?
You got it, I missed it. Sorry about that, Joe. Thanks for correcting me. We had brought before how the process works in the fire department, and when a grievance happens, it goes to the chief on the grievance, and then from there, it comes to the supervisor, which is myself, and the chief, of course, denied their grievance, and also they brought it to me, and I also denied their grievance, and so we wanted to bring it to the public to let them know that, or to the board here, to make a motion to send this on to arbitration. And Joe, you're more than welcome to make any comments tonight as you're here, but thanks for being here tonight.
No, it's just a contract interpretation, and I just appearing here because it's a step of the grievance procedure. In our last negotiations meeting, I offered to just move this right to arbitration, and you said no, to let the board hear it.
Right.
Have they been briefed on it? Have they been given?
Right, I was gonna go through, I just wanted to make sure if you had anything else to say. Okay, all right, and this grievance is over, if you folks remember, not too long ago, we had four, I believe there was a possibility of four lieutenants that would, the possibility of putting in them positions. They had applications, there's a committee that was interviewing them, which I believe is the chief and Mr. Trent and Mr. Converse. And so they went through all of them, and I believe a couple of months ago, we appointed or voted on Eddie Roroff as lieutenant, and also Joe Yukunis. And so the grievance is as Joe Yukunis as being one of the newer firefighters that has gone through his probation time, and the grievance is against him and his seniority not being there. I don't know, he's been over there 6 months, his seniority.
Did you want to present your case, or would you like, so the way we saw from our, let me finish, and then Joe, you can have the floor, if you would prefer, I'll yield to you first.
No, go ahead.
So, from our aspect, firefighter Yukonis was off probation. Firefighter Yukonis had been long off probation when the interview occurred. We scored the individuals. We had a number of top candidates. He was one. Firefighter Roroff was, and then ultimately
Hey, could you
firefighter.
speak up a little bit louder, please?
Sure. And Firefighter
Thank you.
Labadie was also promoted as a lieutenant. So we had 3 firefighters who were promoted to the lieutenant's positions. There's some concern from the union perspective that Firefighter Yukonis has some issues as they see it from the union contract. And I'll let Joe O'Connor speak from the union on their concerns. But, so from the aspect that I see it, he met fully the requirements as a firefighter off of the probationary period. He had gone through the interview panel. He was selected by the team to be nominated to the board. The board accepted that promotion. And I feel from my perspective, we're on firm ground. However, the union, the firefighters, some of the firefighters have a difference of opinion. Hence, that brings us to the position that we're at today.
Okay?
Thank you.
Now sorry, my name is Joe Spokane, I'm a representative for the Michigan Association of Firefighters,
Can't
for
hear
you that
you.
you don't know me. And, Mr. Supervisor, just one correction, the grievance is not against Joe, please don't, I don't want anybody to interpret that fact that this grievance is filed against him. This is a contract interpretation grievance, where there's a difference of opinion between the chief and the union, between,
But it's his position that they're grieving about.
it's the fact that he promoted somebody that had very little seniority.
Which was Joe.
I
Right.
don't wanna
Well,
attach.
well, it is. I mean, it
The
is.
bottom line, yeah, it
Let's
is.
be honest, that's what it is.
Okay, we spoke to the chief when we filed this grievance, or before we filed it, we asked him, please don't do this, let's wait until we get into negotiations and talk about this, and they went ahead and made the promotions anyways. Article 32 says they'll have appropriate departmental seniority. One of your residents was just talking about somebody proving themselves before they paid a bonus, and under, Joe came off of probation after 6 months, got promoted shortly thereafter. There's people, there's firefighters in this department that have 5, 10, 15 years on the job, that have appropriate departmental seniority. They know the community, they know the people in the community, they've been here, they've proven themselves. The first promotion you made was not a promotion, it was a demotion. You took the assistant chief and brought him down to lieutenant. Then you promoted somebody with 6 months on the job or 7 months on the job, and bypass all these other members that have been putting in their time and dedication to the township. The union's position is the contract says, appropriate departmental seniority. 6 or 7 months is not appropriate departmental seniority when you bypass members of the firefight department that have any number of years up to 15, 18 years. So that's where we stand. We've had a discussion with the chief, we've had it with you. We hope to hold off on the promotions until we get to the negotiations table and try to work this out and resolve this before it got to this level. The promotions went ahead, we have no choice but, so we're asking, this is the step to the board, and I have to bring it to the board's attention, so.
Okay.
The supervisor, if I can, Joe, is a question. Is anywhere in the contract, does it define what appropriate seniority is?
No, that's why it's in the contract interpretation. But the seniority section is, they do not have seniority until they're off probation. So once they get off of probation, they pick up seniority. Until that time, they don't have it.
So your position is this firefighter was not on probation, therefore did not have seniority?
No, he was off, but he had, and that's why we're in a contract interpretation. It's what the chief's interpretation of appropriate means and what the union's position on appropriate means.
Is there any place in the contract that says that promotions must be based on seniority, length of seniority?
No.
Amen.
And that's the point right there.
Oh, I know, and that's why I wanted.
And that's the crux of the matter, right there.
And that's why I wanted to hold off on the promotions. We asked the chief, please don't promote, let's get to the negotiations table and fix this before we,
Well, what I'm saying is, just based on longevity or years in the department, doesn't tie in to performance directly. They can do the job, sure, but, attitude, all kinds of things go into it when a decision's made. One has to keep that in mind.
oh, there's no argument there, I understand that. But,
Okay,
yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
but there's also,
That's my point.
he's been here 6 months. Yeah,
That's my point.
okay,
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
thank you.
Any other questions up here? So I think it would be appropriate maybe to make a motion on this, to send this to, or for Jim, maybe for you to draft a letter to the union to deny this grievance.
If I may say, Mr. Supervisor, Mr. Yukonis is a full-time firefighter with Pittsfield Fire Department that has chosen to make Salem Township his home. And I think it's awesome that we have folks like this that bring a talent in from a pretty big department to a department that doesn't get as many calls, nearly as many calls. And I just would like the board to note that this is not a fresh firefighter, this is not a rookie that came out of school.
Okay. So we need to make the motion to do that? You write that up, Mr. Lee?
Okay, it'd be a motion, something like this, a motion for the Fire Chief Rockwell to draft a letter to the fire union to deny the grievance regarding, what was his name? Jody?
I would just put on for promotion to lieutenant. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Number seconds. Any other questions on this? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now I'm back on track. Sorry about that. Under financials, under the 2015-2016 salaries, elected officials, I move that the Salem Township approve the annual salaries for 2015-2016 effective April 1st, 2015, the following rates for the elected officials. Butch Copeland, he's back there with the orange hat. I thought you were gonna like stand up tonight and say, I need a raise, the supervisor should have. So we'll double the amount for the supervisor's salary, just teasing. So, anyway, as it's put here, they have not changed for the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer, $35,100, trustees, $6,150. Have a second on that?
Support. So we'll do a roll call. Converse?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
DeLuca? Yes. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Wensley, yes. And Whitaker?
Yes. Okay, now down to the non-elected officials. I move that Salem Township approve the annual pay rates for 2015-16 fiscal year effective April 1st, 2015 at the following rates for non-elected officials. And we have it in front of us, the deputy treasurer, 1969 an hour. The deputy clerk is $20.66 an hour. Community development administrator, $22 an hour. Building coordinator is $16.50 an hour. And administrative assistant 1 is $22.80 an hour. And the administrative assistant 2 is $14 an hour. Fire chief is $23,300 a year. And the fire department personnel increase is paid according to their contract. We have a second on that?
You said 2280.
I'll second that.
What's that?
What was in the motion that Paul has some different figures?
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
You didn't get the change.
these are right, they must not have got the change. So we have a second on this?
Yep, I'll second.
All right, John, Daniel, seconds, and any other discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor say, we need a roll call on this? You might want
John Daniel. All right, so we have Converse,
No.
Daniel,
Yep.
DeLuca? Yes. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Wensley, yes. And Whitaker?
yes. Okay. So we're down to budget amendments. Mr. Winslow.
move that Salem Township approve the following cost center budget amendments for this past year, the 2014-15 budget, which actually ends here in a few more weeks. The building inspector's pay right now has a budget of $42,000. We need to revise that to $45,000. The electrical inspector's pay is budgeted for $12,000, but we need to revise it to $14,000. And the heating and plumbing inspector's pay is $18,000 currently, but we need to raise that to $21,000. The offsets will be charged against the contingencies like all the other budget amendments are like. Do we have a second?
Mr. Supervisor, I will second the motion, and with Mr. Wensley's consent, I'd also like to add that we amend Department 851, Fringe Benefits and Insurance. Upon further review with our deputy clerk today, the first line item in that cost center, insurance and bonds. Last year, we had expenditures of just under $30,000. We do not receive a bill from our insurance companies in these particular cost center items until May 1st. These are for services rendered up through the end of the fiscal year, and monies need to be reversed back to reflect expenses for this fiscal year. And that was a cost center that we ended up exceeding last year because we got that bill after the end of the fiscal year, but it had to be prorated back. And so the recommendation would be that we increase the insurance and bonds, line item 851, 00915, from $24,000 to $34,000, and increase the workers' compensation line item from $12,000 to $14,000. And hopefully that will suffice for us not to have to worry about that bill that comes in the first week of May, where we can't address it, just in case.
Okay,
These are additions.
any other discussion on that?
What was the first one that we wanted to add?
It's fringe benefits and insurance. On your budget that we put in the board packet, it would be page 14 of the budget worksheet. And then the third paragraph down with the insurance and bonds. If you see the very right-hand column, it says 24,000. David's motion was to raise it to 34,000.
All right, any other discussion on this?
Do a roll call. Converse,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
DeLuca. Yes. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes?
Wensley, yes, and Whitaker.
Yes.
All right, we have our, to approve the budget, we had our public hearing, and now we will be approving next year's fiscal budget, and you have an Appropriations Act in your packet, and based on some of the hourly pay that we had to increase for some of the employees, there is a few changes to, actually, I'll read the changes. Section 7, which is page 2 of Appropriations Act. The Township Supervisors Department 171 is now $105,415. It was $104,711. Going on down to the Township Treasurer, Department 253, we now have $91,016. It was $85,996. The Community Development Department, 372, the change is $135,410. It used to be 134,10. And there's two more changes. In the Fire Department, the new amount is $415,900. What was before is $415,600. And lastly, the other functions, Department 956, 551,404. It was 558,828. That's it.
All right, and I make a motion that we approve this budget for this fiscal year. Have a second on this?
Support.
Trent supports, and maybe we should do a roll call on this.
Yes. Converse,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Wensley, yes, and Whitaker.
Yes. Okay. Budget's passed.
Yeah, we did that.
All right, on to reports. The revenue expense report is submitted, and we'll go down to the fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. In your board package, you have the run sheets before you, and you'll notice that, again, the vast majority of them are medical runs. It's also worth noting that the response time was well under 7 minutes, with 6 minutes and 20 being the average for February. The other thing that I'd like to note for just recently is we had a mutual aid request for a tanker to Dexter Fire Department. I believe they were on their 4th or 5th alarm for this residential house structure. It was a pretty good drive for us. We got there, helped out a little bit, but they were able to put the fire out. One other thing that I want to note, we just had our time change. So it's a reminder to change your batteries in your smoke alarms. Out at the modular home park, we got a call for an alarm from a smoke detector at about 10:30 at night. They'd just gone to bed, got a call and say, hey, our alarm's going off, could you just come check it out? So you come out there with this meter here, which is much more advanced than your smoke detector. This meter's about $4,000 or $5,000. As soon as we entered the house, this alarm went off. So this $20 detector, if these people had gone to bed and didn't have the detector or didn't respond to the detector going into alarm, they probably would not have woken up. That's how high the CO alarm was there. We walked around the house, we found it, what had happened is the hot water heater had broken and separated from the pipe, and it was exhausting that CO into their structure. So for those who have these detectors, make sure you change the batteries because they don't work if they don't have a battery in them. And then we recommend that you get the multi-alarm with the CO and the fire alarm built into it. it's cheap insurance, and you know what? The levels were so high in that house, I don't think they would have woken up if they went to sleep that night and didn't have one of these. So, just a little push for them, it's a big deal. And then, lastly, we're getting calls about potholes on the side of roads and stuff. Obviously, the roads are getting, with the snow melt. The sheriff was great last night. We had 3 or 4 cars that had broken down on Pontiac Trail. We got the call, we dispatched him out there, he stood by, we put some cones out there. He got the road commission out there to put some coal patch. So, let us know so that, you know, people don't break their tires, and just be cognizant. We've got this, you know, the shoulders are getting pretty broken up right now with the freeze thaw. So, recommend slow your speeds down, don't go through flooded zones all that quick, and just, again, you know, pay attention, let us know so that we can get the road commission out there to address these areas. That's all I have to report. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thanks, Jim.
There's 2 potholes right down the road here on
Right.
6 Mile.
Okay.
Was it probably one in front of Jerry's house?
Okay, have board members had a good chance to look at this lease agreement? Can we get this approved so we can get this signed and get some of that work done? May I make a motion that we approve this lease?
In section 1, Mr. Supervisor, she goes dates to the calendar year 2015.
That's correct. Duly noted.
I do have a question with regards to the 235 acres, that's the whole parcel, he only leases just the part that he farms, is that not right?
Right.
So is that 235 correct, or should it be the number of acres that he actually farms?
Well, this is the same lease that he signed last year,
Right.
Okay.
as far as the acreage. The supervisors like to give a little background on this?
Okay.
For the benefit of the board, basically it is the same lease that was signed last year. What's changed, obviously, there's been a slight increase in the rent amount up to $18,469. The other change was that in lieu of the rent amount, the lessee has agreed to demolish all the structures on the property. And if that is accomplished by May 1st of this year, then that will be taken as consideration for the lease payment in lieu of the $18,000 in rent. Other changes in the lease agreement have to do with the fact, making sure the township is both indemnified and properly insured for any demolition work that's done, making sure that proper permits are pulled for the demolition work, and make sure any necessary licenses are obtained.
Is May 1st sufficient amount of time to do this from now?
I believe so, just depending right now, the frost laws are on, so depending how long that stays on. And then, I mean, if it has to be extended some. Sure we can.
Gary, can I ask, Mr. Plato, if we're leasing all this 235, if we open it up to the public, is that gonna be a problem? Because we're gonna be opening it up for public to use paths in between his crops and stuff like that?
Well, they're only leasing it for farming purposes. I'll review this to make sure that we're not excluding ourselves from use of the property.
I appreciate that.
That's why I had the question, because he's not leasing the land that we're gonna be using for whatever.
Do we have a description of the specific parcel that he's farming?
I think Bill has those,
Okay.
He's farming like 140.
46 acres.
146, 140 something.
And so he should, somehow it should be that we don't have to ask permission from him, so public can go on it.
Correct.
Thank
Gary?
Yep.
Isn't there somewhere in there where whoever rents the property has to pay the taxes on the property?
Right, if there's taxes incurred, yes.
Is there taxes incurred?
There should be, yeah.
Well, you have
We're
to pay
waiting
them?
for that.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Well,
we're
that's,
waiting.
is that in the lease agreement?
In the lease agreement, the taxes that have already been, on all the properties in the township, there's a slight, I don't know what actually what they are, but they are paid by
It's based on the lease.
They have,
based on the lease.
No, what do you mean by that now?
Well, the
Isn't
town,
that up and over what he rents the property for?
Yes.
what the law states, because I have delved into that big time. The law states that you cannot lease public land for an unfair advantage to give to a farmer. So in other words, what that basically says, there's no taxes due, but the taxes have to come back out, and the taxes are basically in the taxes that the fees that we get have the taxes included in them. So in essence, he is paying the taxes on the property as required. by
That's not
state
the way I
law.
always understood it. I
That's the
mean,
way state
unless
law
you
has
just
worked.
changed it.
That's the way state law has been, always has been.
okay, any other questions on this?
I would think maybe just getting on in the case of frost laws, delaying the process or, you know.
Yeah, I think, doesn't it say in here, Ed, that we have the discretion to push it out some?
Yeah, as far as the extension, if it's not completed by May 1st.
Right.
Yeah, under paragraph 14 at the very end, it says, should such demolition not be completed by May 1st,
Oh, yeah, okay.
or the lease payment described under 2, the board shall have the authority to grant additional time if it's done in writing.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve this lease that's been presented. We have a second on this?
I'll second.
I want to amend that motion.
Okay.
I want to change this contract from 235 acres to 147 acres.
Yeah, we'll need to get the parcel descriptions in there, what he's actually leasing.
Should show a boundary line of that 147.
So that, this goes beyond what we had envisioned for this property.
And we can certainly change that, but this was, like I said, this was what was signed last year, that he was leasing.
Yeah, we didn't get it last year.
What they're farming are like 5 different plots.
Yes,
They're not, I don't know if they have boundary descriptions to them.
but I have the same concern as you, Susan, is that if we put 235, he's leasing the whole thing, and that way are we in violation by letting other people come onto that property, and that's our property.
Well, and yes, and would our insurance cover then if we're on that property
I
that
think
he's
it's
leasing?
legally, we have to put down there what he's actually leasing and what he's exporting.
To Mr. Converse's point, Mr. Supervisor, I think the original bid was for 147 tillable acres.
Right.
Probably that's a phrase that should be incorporated in that as well.
And the structures are located where in that? Is that in part of the parcel that he's farming?
No,
No.
So actually, we're having him demolish property that's not on the property that he's leasing.
technically no.
And then we would be responsible for the liability during the time he's demolishing.
But we're protected in that he's required to indemnify the township for any liability incurred during demolition. He's also required to name the township as an additional insured under his liability policy for the demolition operations. The township has to make sure, though, you get a certificate of insurance from them showing that the township is an additional named insured.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yep.
How are you gonna restrict the public access to his crops?
Yeah, that's something we're gonna have to figure out.
You know, if it's public land, it's public land. And I would think if you're gonna lease it, there'd be an expectation of sole use. You wouldn't have people walking between your crops or on paths or anything like that.
No dirt bikes.
That's where it has to be, really,
Why you gonna lease it out
the
then?
trails have to be.
I think it has to be an all or nothing. I don't think I would be a farmer that would say, well, the public will be able to get within, 5 feet of your crops and they shouldn't damage them.
Ken?
Well, I farm, and I farm the South Lion Parks and Rec piece of property on 8 Mile Road in Dixboro. And, of course, it's open to the public, it's got public access. As everybody knows, the walking path goes along the east side. Well, I agreed to, and actually kind of protecting Batiste over there, is I agreed to, when I started going in there with bulldozers and excavators and clearing all that, but I agreed to have a walking path all the way, for the most part, around all the edges. And I even put 2x4s and 4x4s in there with arrows for people to walk, because they still wanted to walk their dogs basically along in the nature trail per se. So that's what I did for the city. Me and my son went out there and we walked around the edge and we put poles in, and I left a buffer so that the pedestrians could still use it, because it's their property. So, you gotta come to a compromise there. And on that piece, there's only 147, but you really gotta designate where you're gonna have the public walk, because now, people up there, they're supposed to have their dogs on leash. Well, we know they don't follow the rules, because I've seen dogs across the field, but, that happens, and you can't really complain too much about it. But, I've dealt with it, and I've had, nice crops off that farm.
Right.
So, if you designate it to go on the outside edges,
Right.
and there's a lot of roads, 2-track roads that go down there to get to them other fields, it really shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Everybody can make
It
it work.
just really needs to be designated, that's the land
Exactly.
preservation.
It can work.
Okay, so we want to change this to the 147 tillable acres?
146, 147.
So 146 or 147? I think it was it 146? You remember?
I thought 47.
47? All right, let's go 147.
That's great.
147. Tillable acres.
So,
The motion is to approve the lease for the 147 tillable acres. Yeah, I think that's got to be determined by the Land Preservation Board as far as the paths and everything, which is being kind of somewhat worked on. So,
Well,
I
and
think we need to get the lease.
It'll come to your board.
Right, but I think we need to get the lease signed and get the demo work done, and, I know you're working on some signage now and stuff like that, so.
One more question, what if his 147 doesn't match your 147?
Well, it's kind of what's already been farmed out there now. It's almost kind of, you can kind of tell what they're doing now. So, it's just for this year. It's only a year lease, so it's like we can see I'm sure we're not going to get the trails and everything what we're talking about this year. So,
Well, we do have one trail
Right.
that we're going to
Right.
do, but it's already there,
right,
and it's along a wooded area and part of his farm area, but then it comes straight towards the east, towards that parking lot. So it's just a small trail at this point.
right.
I just think spring crops are not gonna be easily seen by people out there walking the dogs.
We're not opening quite yet, anyway. We have a lot of work to do.
Okay, so should we pass this lease? We have a second?
the second to the amendment?
Right.
No.
I'll support the amendment.
right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, we've got reports on Washington County law enforcement, and then we're down to board discussion on the Salem Springs USD, just kind of give a brief update. I've asked Mr. Plato to kind of give us a brief summary of stuff that's been going on, so.
As brief as I can be for the years this has gone. Excuse me. Most of you probably are well aware of what's the litigation that's been ongoing with Salem Springs and the referendum that took place in the township. But for those of you who aren't aware, and for those who may need a refresher, I'll just give you some background. There has been for a couple of years litigation pending between Salem Springs LLC, which is the Showstack-owned company, Salem Township, and a group called, that was led by Norm Klein Sr., and the group is called the Concerned Citizens of Salem. The background is that Salem Springs Showstack owns 91 acres of property that runs on the north side of M14, roughly between Napier and Gottfriedson. In May of 2012, the prior township board rezoned that property from agriculture residential to general commercial. In July of 2012, then Norm Klein filed petitions for a referendum election. In August of 2012, the township board, based on the petitions that were filed, adopted a resolution approving the ballot wording for the referendum election. And in November of 2012, the voters of Salem Township, they held the referendum election and voted against the rezoning of that property to general commercial. As would be expected, the developer was not going to back down quietly. In that same month, Salem Springs filed a complaint in the Washtenaw Circuit Court seeking to overturn the referendum election. We'll get into the details of the basis for that. But in March of 2013, then when the new board came on, they adopted an ordinance rezoning that property, that 91 acres, to residential office park, which we believe is consistent with the master plan. In April of 2013, the parties in the lawsuit, meaning the township, the Kleins, and Salem Springs, filed cross motions for summary disposition. We said as a matter of law that we didn't think there was sufficient basis for them to overturn the referendum election. Salem Springs felt that the petitions were filed late for the referendum election. Ultimately, over a year later, the court finally issued a written opinion in June of last year saying that the referendum election was invalid because petitions that had been filed by the Norm Klein group were filed too late. The Norm Klein Concerned Citizens Group have filed an appeal. Appeal briefs have recently been filed. So the parties to that appeal, of course, are again Norm Klein and the Concerned Citizens of Salem, Salem Township, and Salem Springs LLC. The important thing is that while that litigation has been ongoing, there have been discussions over the last 2 years, particularly over the last 6 to 8 months, about how this can be resolved. The Kleins and the residents in that area of the urban service district naturally want to protect their property. They don't want a large commercial development going in. They don't want big box stores going in there. So there have been ongoing discussions between, particularly between the attorneys for the Kleins, the attorneys for Salem Springs, and the attorneys for the township about how this can be resolved. And there have been various proposals back and forth. And of course, in a lot of those proposals have involved questions of whether these things can actually be done. So we've had to have the township engineers and the township planners look at these matters to say, is this even feasible? Can this be done? So those are things that have been going on and will continue to go on. Ultimately, if there is some resolution in that litigation between the parties, that settlement, that resolution will be brought back to the board for approval. So until that's done, there's nothing's finalized. And once that's presented to the board, it'll obviously be made, be made public at that time. The public can hear what's being proposed, what's been agreed upon by the parties, before the board votes on that. So that's kind of the update on the ongoing Salem Springs litigation, which will probably be in the Court of Appeals at least another year. So that's why the parties have earnestly tried to figure out some way to resolve the case. Some of the things we're looking at is really keeping the area close to the residential section where the Kleins and others live, keeping that area natural, have kind of a natural buffer. There's some hills in there, so we're trying to keep that area preserved and totally undeveloped to protect the residents, with the actual any commercial development being very close to right along M14 and closer to Godfreyson. So those are the discussions that have been ongoing. I'd be happy to answer any questions I can. I'll say, obviously, I can't get into the details of the settlement discussion, but if you have any general questions about litigation, I'd be happy to answer those. The other thing that Supervisor asked me to update you on is there have been ongoing discussions for years and years on how water and sewer is going to be supplied for the urban service district. There have been discussions with Detroit Water and Sewer dating back, I think, to 2006, 2007. Initially, that was cost prohibitive because of upfront fees that Detroit Water and Sewer wanted to charge the township. So other avenues were explored. Municipal well systems were explored. Bringing in water and sewer through Plymouth Township has been explored. And the township has worked independently, the developers worked independently to explore these different options, and ultimately we are now working together and have come to the conclusion that the most cost-effective way to bring water and sewer into the urban service district is to do so, to bring water in through Detroit Water and Sewer at a connection down at Joy and Napier, and to have the USD serviced for sewer by Yucca. That would involve bringing in a line through Superior Township up into the USD. The total cost of that, it's a fairly large figure for both water and sewer, is about $20 million. That's been looked at by the township's engineers, by the developers' engineers, and they agree upon it's somewhere probably between $19 and $20 million. Of course, then the question becomes, how's that going to be paid for? So some of the things we're exploring is having a special assessment district for the urban service district, and the issuance of bonds either by the county or by the township. There's pros and cons in both ways, having the township issue the bonds or having the county issue the bonds. One of the issues that we're carefully exploring is that, there have been bond issues in other townships where there was default on the payments by the SAD for those special assessments, and the townships were left holding payments on the bond debt. We don't want that to happen in Salem Township. So what we're discussing, and we now have, beyond Showstack, we have I think about 90–95% of the landowners in the urban service district participating. We've got Absolute Pure, we've got Magnum, a couple others that I don't remember their names. But they're all literally at the table. They've come to the township, we've had meetings, and what we're discussing is that knowing that the value of their property, particularly in a vacant state, if their property had to be sold in a forced sale because nobody was making payments on the special assessment district, the value of that property would certainly not be $20 million. It would probably be less than half that, maybe even a quarter of that. So what we've been discussing is how do we protect the township for that difference, so the township doesn't get stuck having to continue to pay the bonds without having the money come in from the special assessment district. So we have proposed to the landowners, and they are receptive to this because they want to develop their property, is putting up some sort of financial assurance, such as a letter of credit or a surety, that would make up that difference between the value of their land and the forced sale and the total bond obligation. So that if the bottom dropped out of everything and nobody's making their special assessment payments, township would then have the right to force the sale of their land. They'd get the value of their land. In addition to that, they'd get the letters of credit over and above that to make up that gap to pay off the $20 million bond. So those discussions are ongoing. Like I said, we've got all the major players involved now, and we're happy that we're going beyond Showstack. We've got other individuals, major property owners in the USD who are interested in developing their property. They like the idea of bringing in public water and sewer and not having municipal wells in there. So it looks like everybody's on board. We're proceeding in the right direction. But there's a lot of pieces of that puzzle need to be put together, particularly from a financing aspect. But we're very carefully exploring how that's to be done. You know, the best way, with our ultimate goal to be to make sure the township is protected, because no matter what, whether the county, whether the county issues the bonds or the township still has to pledge their full faith and credit on those bonds. So we're going to make sure the township is protected in the event the bottom falls out of everything.
I have a question. If the surety bond is only between the value of the land and the $20 million, what if you can't resell that land for another 15 or 20 years and the bonds are due? Then what?
Well, we're talking about the forced sale, if that
Yes.
property had to be immediately sold.
But
and
what
that's,
if you didn't have another buyer? And somebody still had come up with the money on the bonds? Shouldn't the surety be on the whole thing?
well, it's unusual to have that financial assurance over and above the value of the property. So we're protecting the township in that way, or at least that's what's being discussed.
Ed, why wasn't this all, talked about and done over before you voted on that? Shouldn't this have been something that would have been signed and known about before you guys voted on letting them, with their things a lot earlier?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I mean,
Voting on what?
before, huh?
The subdivision.
Yeah, before the subdivision.
Oh,
Shouldn't
is
this be something that was, a done deal before it was, how they were gonna do this kind of stuff, before it was okay for them to start the subdivision stuff?
As far as the water and sewer, you mean?
Yes.
The way the PUD ordinance was written for, and we're talking about the property used to be the JCI property, it's now gonna be a residential development. The way that PUD ordinance was written is that it's totally conditional upon that area being served by public water and sewer. So that if for some reason this whole deal on public water and sewer falls apart, that PUD development cannot go forward. The other thing is that PUD ordinance is also conditional upon the township and Showstack coming to terms on a development agreement for that property. And if at any point we can't come to terms on that, and that has to be accomplished within the next year, I believe it is, if those terms aren't met for the development agreement and if the township decides it doesn't like the terms that they propose, then again, there's no development agreement, the PUD ordinance falls by the way and is considered null and void. So at this point, we really haven't committed to anything. We've passed a PUD ordinance that has many, many conditions on it, that if any of those fall through, then the PUD ordinance isn't valid.
Now, is that in favor of the township though?
Pardon?
Is everything you got said in favor of the township?
I think we're very well protected. My position is we really haven't agreed to much anything. We've given them the right to go ahead and submit site plans with the understanding that nothing in that PUD ordinance gives them final approval on anything.
Thank you.
I have a question about, has the Washtenaw County, have they been active in this discussions about the bond? Are they in favor of this?
Washtenaw County was not in favor, when they, a long time ago, Showstack approached the county with the idea of seeing if they would issue bonds for the utilities. They were not in favor of issuing bonds for Showstack or any private developer. Once they found the township was involved, they became more interested. In fact, we recently spoke with the county just in the last 2 weeks about the possibility of them not only issuing the bonds for the project, but possibly even servicing the water, providing maintenance and the billings for the water for the township. And that's something that they were very interested in pursuing. So we may be able to get the county involved on two different levels, not only issuing the bonds for the financing, but also in providing the servicing and the maintenance.
One more question. Did I hear you correctly when you said that if Washtenaw County gives us the bonds for this, that if there's a default, that it falls down to Salem Township? So no matter what, we are partners then with Washtenaw County for these bonds, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's correct. Well, whether the bonds are issued by the township or by the county, the township still has to pledge your full faith and credit to back up those bonds.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Got a question here. I know the residents nearby that site don't want a big box store or anything like that, but wouldn't that be helpful to the township in creating a few hundred jobs if there was even one store for the people in this area and to get money flowing into the area?
Exactly. That's what we're hoping, that commercial development will certainly bring jobs into the area.
Yeah, but I mean, just one big box store could bring several hundred jobs.
Well, I think, I don't want to speak for the township board, but I think the feeling of the township, and certainly the feeling of the residents that live around the
Yeah.
urban service district, don't want a big box store in there.
Well, I'd love to see a nice big Walmart in there.
Any of the other ones are a bummer to get to.
Any discussions we've had have specifically excluded anything that would resemble a big box store going in there.
Okay, well, even something like 3 or 4 smaller stores
It's gonna happen.
that would bring maybe 50 or 100 jobs apiece instead of one big box.
Right.
I can understand the big box. I live out here. I don't want to see them either, but if it's something that's really going to help the township, I could be convinced for it.
And I think the commercial development that's going to go in there not only will be aesthetically pleasing for the township, but it's also going to generate local jobs.
Okay.
Anybody else? I think the most important thing too, and thinking ahead of this, that seems to be coming, to me, it's about when the sewer and water comes, that's when it's gonna really hit all at once. And, my fear is that, number one, that the township is protected, that we're not gonna fall back on, the development doesn't come. But then two is that how that Four Corners is gonna look. We go into so many communities today that it just doesn't look like it was planned right. And that's, I think, should be our biggest fear, is that, the proper planners, anybody to make sure that the right thing goes there, and that it's attractive, it's the gateway into Salem, and that it's gonna be something that's gonna be pleasing to all of us. And, because we've been in so many communities where it doesn't look like there was much thought and planning behind it. So that's, I think there's a lot coming, a lot of people. There's a lot of people I didn't even know they're coming in and talking about different proposals that have been proposed years ago, and because they're hearing about the sewer and water and stuff.
It's my understanding that in order for Washtenaw County or Salem Township to do any kind of bonding, you have to actually have a project. I mean, at this point, there is really no set project except for the PUD. So you're gonna bond on something that is is nebulous. We're just bringing all this water and sewer in for a potential, of 1 mega, whatever that is, for water and sewer, but we have no specific projects in order to be able to support that. And that was always what was our issue when I was on the board.
I think the people that own the property
Yeah.
have,
Well, they
yeah,
have real projects.
they have
So
projects.
they will present those projects prior to you doing this bond. Is that my understanding?
I'm not necessarily sure that's how it works.
No. They need to have utilities before they can market the property. You know, it's kind of a obviously a catch-22 situation. But like I say, we now have all the major players at the table, and they realize that now is the time to develop that property in the USD. And they're all very interested in developing, and that's why they're willing to put up financial assurances that they wouldn't otherwise to bring in water and sewer into the urban service district. And one of the things I should mention is that the other thing we're gonna make sure of is that the water and sewer that will be brought in will service only the urban service district. Nobody else outside of the urban service district will be able to tap into either the water or the sewer. It's gonna be limited to that particular area. That's the commercial development area. It's gonna be limited to that area.
Is this financial assurance a certain percentage of this 20 million, or is this just like not negotiated yet?
We're gonna have to bring in financial advisors to discuss that. It's going to basically be, our position is from the township, it has to be an amount, the difference between the forced sale value of their property and the amount of the bond debt. I think some of the, particularly Shostak is of the opinion, should just be market value, not forced sale value. Some of the other players seem to go along with, we understand that the township needs to be protected, so it's helpful getting all the players involved because we're not just doing battle against one person. And the voice of reason tends to prevail when you have that many people at the table. It's worked well, I think.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, we're down to public comment.
Hey, Mr. Winsley, a while back I was talking to you about getting a carport out there for the vehicles that are sitting out there in the weather, and at the time you thought it was a great idea. Well, I asked you tonight about, if you've done anything about it, and you said, oh yes, I've talked to Gary about it. Mr. Winsley, you've been on that board for 2 years, 2.5 years. Don't you realize that there's 5 more members on that board besides you and Gary? You don't have to okay everything with Gary. Gary's only 1 vote. And if you thought it was such a good idea, you could have brought it to the board and bypassed Gary. But no, you had to run to Gary. To be honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, you ought to be sitting out in the parking lot.
Okay.
Something was said a while back about changing the carpeting, and I saw some samples here one day. I hope you picked something other than those, because those were all horrible.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, they're installing it tomorrow, the one that you don't like. That's coming. It'll be here. Next meeting, you'll see it. No, that's not the case. But the plan is to, we have border review this week. So we've kind of put, we have the tax season, and so we're, April, we're thinking of getting that started, so. But it's still on plan to do that. Okay, anybody else? Brian?
Mr. Whitaker.
Yes, sir.
Really, I came just for dessert. But,
Well, thanks for being here.
I will be honest. One thing that I did take a little bit of an interest to was the lieutenant promotions. I wasn't aware of the whole situation, and listening to Joe talk a little bit about that. And Mr. Daniel brings up a good point, that seniority alone is not a reason for promotion, and I'll agree with that. But barring that, seniority and, say, job performance, both of those together. And I would imagine all of the candidates have multiple job performances from us, performance reviews from us that we've looked at, correct? I would imagine all of them, because if you're not going on just seniority, you have to go on performance. So, I think it was Mr. Wensley and Mr. Trent were on the committee. Nope. Oh, sorry, Mr. Converse and Mr. Trent. Mr. Trent's on all the committees. And barring just looking at seniority, they would have had to have looked at job performance, and I don't think you can just rely on the chief for that, although the chief is one aspect of that. I would imagine written job performances were part of that. And if not, how else was this individual promoted? If not based on job performance and seniority? Just a comment.
On that grievance they're talking about, the question, was it posted? Did anybody have a chance to sign up for it?
Yes, sir.
Another thing, Gary, I don't think the union should have a choice in who you guys wanna make lieutenant. That should be the choice of the board. You know, if they wanna grieve it, let them grieve it. I just don't think they should have the say-so. Do the best man, and I think that Joe is one of the best men we have on that job.
Based on seniority or performance?
Huh?
Based
Based on
seniority?
background.
So that's seniority.
You've been on the fire department, you've been on the,
That's
you've
not
seen how the fire
seniority.
department's been acting
It's not
when
seniority.
Purdy and those guys were in on it.
Experience.
To be honest with you, it was a
All
total
right.
wreck.
All right,
I love this guy.
let's just, let's.
I tell you the way it is.
All right,
I miss Joe, yeah. I've been around for a while.
all right. Anyone else?
Hey Gary, my name's David.
Hey, Dave.
I'm relatively new to the township. This is my first meeting. So I'm vaguely aware of the Salem Springs project, and I came tonight to kind of get more info about it. But is this in general considered like a black eye of the township? Like, is this, my wife and I moved down here from the city to get away from this kind of stuff, right? So is this considered like a wave of the future? Like, I don't know enough about what properties join all this and what, because I figured this kind of investment is going to go into this region to get these kind of utilities put in, and what's going to stop further growth, what's going to, is this, I assume it was approved before.
And years ago, just real quick, years ago, the master plan was for more high density, which is that urban services district was created, to not have the high density more out part where most of us all live. But that area was created years ago to say that was gonna be there. People bought the property thinking that someday sewer and water is gonna go there to have some kind of development there. So I think all of us that have been around for a while, people who've lived here, have realized that someday something is gonna happen there. And, but once again, I think it's important for the community and the board and everybody to just be aware of that. This needs to be done right. And it needs to look good. And, but it's coming, and of course developers want it to be developed, and we just want to make sure it's done right. And then being protected. I mean, that's the big thing, because we've heard of horror stories of other communities. Put the burden of the utilities being put on us as taxpayers, so. But I'd be glad to meet with you, Dave, anytime and give you more
Breakfast.
information on any of that stuff to kind of give you more update. And
I appreciate it. Thanks.
like having you in our community. Thanks.
And Mr. Supervisor, if I can just add to that, the purpose of setting up the urban service district was to keep that development, that commercial development in one area, and keep the rest of Salem Township rural and,
Well, and that's easy to say, but what's to stop growth? Once everything's there, it seems like a real easy opportunity for it to continue, right? And areas like South Lyon and that's just growing faster than it can deal with it,
Right, a lot of it, is the sizing of the pipe that's coming in. Salem will actually own, the sewer line.
Yeah.
And, it's depending on how it's sized also, how much you can, could extend it. So we wanna concentrate on saying this is the capacity, that's all the capacity there is. 100 years from now, maybe Salem will wanna have more growth, and then they have to figure out another way, so. All right, any other comments? All right, thanks for everyone for being here tonight, we're adjourned, and